If you want to make 2023 the best year ever, you're going to have to do things in the best sequence. Sometimes just doing some of the right behaviors might be helpful, but doing them in the right sequence will really give rocket power to your business, right? So do me a favor. Hey, Kelly, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see list to last series, weekly training 11/7? Cool. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Okay. So here's what we got, folks. Okay. Like I mentioned, type live in the chat if you're committed to tuning in live for the next 20 minutes. All I need is 20 minutes of your attention, because we're going to go through some things that if you take and you implement, okay, it's going to be very, very beneficial for your business going forward. Okay. Again, if you're on the replay, go ahead and make sure you're letting us know #replay so we can see how many people are coming in. We want to make sure that we get this dialed in for you folks, right? And if you want me to send you a replay at the end of the night, okay, or at the end of the day, type gift in quotes in either the chat or in the Facebook Messenger, and we'll be absolutely sure to check that out to make sure we get you a copy. Okay, so cool. So thank you guys so much for coming in here and being a part every week. So I'm going to be going over a very powerful message today on how to make more money in 2023. So make more money, frankly, than you ever have. So stick tight. Make sure you have a pen and paper, right? The more you engage with the information, the better it is, right? So when I say, this is a brain hack, guys. When I tell you to type 1 in the chat, type this or type that, it's not just to get you guys, because I like looking at comments. What it helps you do is it engages your concentration, your focus, and it makes you focus on the task at hand. And the more ways that you interact with information, whether it's listening, watching, typing, writing, okay, the more ways your brain can store it. Your brain is like a high-powered file cabinet, and if the more drawers you put the information in, the more likely you are to be able to repeat it and to be able to put it into action. Okay, so what we're going to cover tonight, guys, is going to a sales-only approach, so you never have to worry about getting ghosted by tenants that you represent again. Guys, show of hands or type 1 in the chat for me if you've ever worked with a tenant and they've gone through and they've said, yeah, I want this, I want that, and you go around, you show them around, and next thing you know, after working with them for a couple of days or weeks or maybe even a couple months, and they just vanish, like they pull a Houdini on you. Type 1 in the chat if that's ever happened to you. Because I tell you what, guys, it's absolutely happened to me. I see Kelly says yes. Cynthia says yes. Yep, 100%. Guys, if you've been in this business for any amount of time, right, that has happened to you. Why? Well, there's a multitude of reasons, but that's why we recommend a sales-only approach, right? You can still do some leasing, but it's a sales-focused approach. In a perfect world, I would love to have you guys doing sales only. Why? Because you're going to make the most money doing it, right? It's very, very simple. To get to the top of that earnings pyramid, sales are the way to go, and representing sellers is the fastest way to get there, because it gives you the most bang for your buck in terms of your time, and it gives you the most control of your business. How many of you guys, by typing in the chat, if you type the word control, if you'd like to have more control of your business in 2023, let's see. If everyone on here isn't typing that in, you're in the wrong place. There we go. Okay, Kelly, Cynthia, Owen, awesome. Everybody wants more control. Why? Because you can predict your income better that way, guys. The more you can control your time, the more you can control your income. Okay, so the next thing we're going to cover, we're going to go over how to sell multiple property types, right? To increase the amount of opportunities you have, so you never have to work with buyers again. Okay, just like how many of you have gotten ghosted by tenants, how many of you have ever gotten ghosted by a buyer? You go to their place, they tell you what they want, they go round and round and round. Just like with tenants, you spend hours and hours of your time, you maybe even drive around, and next thing you know, they stop calling you, they stop texting you. It's like you're a leper, right? You're like, oh, what happened? I thought we were buddies. I thought I was helping you try to find a new place for your business, and all of a sudden they evaporate, right? So I see Gary's giving the thumbs up. Nick, absolutely. So that's the thing, guys. The more control you have of your business, the happier you'll be, and the more you'll be able to predict your income. And then finally, we're going to be going over how to earn 30 to 40% more in commissions by learning to get both sides of the transaction, so you don't get burned when the banks back out last minute, right? How many of you have ever had like deals fall apart because the bank, pulled the financing, or they tried to ask for something last minute and the deal just completely fell apart, right? I don't know anybody that hasn't had this happen, and especially now, type one in the chat if you've ever had the banks mess up a deal for you, right? And it's something that's completely out of your control. So you know what the antidote to that is? Have more opportunities and double side more transactions. The more transactions you can double side, it not only makes up for those opportunities or those transactions where it falls apart, but it also it's less work you have to do to make the same amount of money. Okay, and I think that's why we're all here. We're all trying to get our axe razor sharp. Okay, and then finally, as an added bonus, learn how to pick 10 times more listings by implementing persistent prospecting, guys. Not always do you go there and you pick up the listing on the very first meeting, but if you launch a campaign of persistence prospecting, that's our trademark prospecting approach, you will 10x. And I don't mean that facetiously. I mean literally, you will increase your opportunities by tenfold, because most people will not do the things that you are willing to do. If you want to earn what 1% of earners earn in this country, right? And in fact, guys, put 1%. Do me a favor, put that in the chat if you guys would like to earn what 1%ers of this country are earning, right? I see Juan wants to get in the 1%. Is Juan the only one? Who else? Does anybody know what the 1% is? That's like $428,000 or more. Okay, it's a nice day's work, right? So, or nice earnings for a year. If you want to earn what 1% of people earn, you have to do the things that 99% of people will not do. Okay, very important. Nothing in this life comes for free. But the more you increase your knowledge, the more you increase your skills, the more persistent you are, the more likely you are to do the things that are necessary to earn the level of success that you want. Okay, so without further ado, folks, okay, we're going to get into the information. By the way, this is our first episode in the List to Last series. So I'm going to be giving away our free 66-page ebook showing you exactly what it takes to earn 3 commercial listings per month in 90 minutes or less per day without getting burned by those tenants, banks, or buyers, right? So if you guys are interested, haven't gotten your copy of it yet, go ahead and type a hashtag ebook for your copy, and we're going to get you over a copy ASAP. Guys, once you take on this philosophy and you understand why you're doing it, it makes it so much easier to figure out how to do it, okay? So, as I mentioned, right, sales only approach, item number 1, right? Who doesn't? Why doesn't everybody go to a sales only approach? We've already established that tenants, you don't make as much money working with tenants. Okay. We already established that sometimes working with buyers, they can be flaky too. So why doesn't everybody go to a sales only approach? Okay. There's a few reasons for that, right? It's not because they don't want to, but most people don't know how to. And the reality of it is only about 10% of people in the brokerage community know how to take listings on a regular, repeated basis. I'm going to say that again. Only about 10% of brokers know how to take listings on a regular, repeated basis. Sure, everybody has one that falls in their lap every once in a while from someone in their sphere of influence, what have you, but not everybody knows how to create consistency and repeatability to their business model, okay? So that's why, or else everyone would be doing it, because it's no secret that working with listings, and like they say, that's why we called it the List to Last series. You have to list to last. There's only so much you can do with buyers. You can only work with so many buyers simultaneously. There's only so many tenants you can work with, right? So what's really missing in all of this, guys, is the knowledge. It's the strategy that's missing. Because if you think about it, if you already had the knowledge and you already had the strategy, you'd already be doing it. Because I don't know anybody that says, you know what, I'd rather work with buyers. They're so few and far between, right? And that's really, what it comes down to, folks. Do me a favor, folks. As you're, just to put this all into context, write down on a piece of paper. You don't have to share it with the group, but write down what you'd like to earn in the next 12 months, okay? And then write down what you earned in the last 12 months, okay? And then subtract that second number, what you earned in the last 12 months, from the first number, what you'd like to earn in the next 12 months. And what that number will tell you is the gap in your knowledge and the gap in your strategy, right? So for instance, and do me a favor, just if you don't mind putting that gap number in the chat, right? So if you want to make $400,000 next year and you made $250 this year, guess what? Your gap is $150,000. That's the gap in your knowledge. That's the gap in your strategy, okay? So go ahead and put that in the chat if you don't mind sharing, right? Because that's what, if you already had the knowledge, if you already had the strategy, you'd already be making, right? So I see Juan put 150. Brian says 300. There we go. Okay, folks, that's what it's costing you not to have the knowledge, not to have the skills, not to have the strategy in place. Okay. So, like I mentioned, most people go wrong, with trying to put in a sales approach. If they do spend the time and are actually going to go after it, most people go wrong with trying to just dial the phone book. There's no plan. There's no strategy. It's the right idea. It's just the wrong execution, right? And then oftentimes, I consider it like going to battle, right? Imagine this. How successful would a soldier be if they went to battle with no sword, no shield, no body armor, no helmet, and no combat boots? Do you think they would be very successful? The short answer to that is no. But let's say you were following a general who has been through battles like this before. Let's say you were following a proven strategy that's shown military success before. You had the best sword, the best shield, the best boots, the best body armor. Do you think you'd be better prepared for battle? Okay. So the question is, going into 2023, how are you going to be going into battle? Okay. Because a game plan, proven systems, and support are what you need. So you never have to work with buyers again. You take that control back into your business, right? I can't tell you how many times I worked with somebody and went round and round and round, and maybe I didn't qualify them properly, or maybe they were working with multiple people at the same time. There's nothing worse than that, right? When they're just running, they're playing both ends to the middle. And because I didn't have the strategy, and that's the only way I knew how to do it, I felt kind of out of control of my business, right? And frankly, that's what happens when you try to figure it out on your own. If you don't have the right process in place, you're going to run down these dark alleys. You're going to try to understand like how to get to this kind of strategy, but you're just not going to know how to do it because you're not following a system that's been proven before. You're kind of poking in the dark. The way we explain it is it's like there's 10 doors in a row. Would you rather try to open all 10 doors and see what's behind the door? Or would you rather be told like which door to go to directly and just get it done, right? So now, part number 2, right? And this is the second step kind of to the strategy, right? Is learning how to sell multiple property types. I can't tell you folks enough how this old school methodology is still in brokerage. Why it is, I have no idea, but all I know is that it is, right? So typically, for most brokers that were like in their, let's say, late 40s, 50s, 60s, and they came up 25, 30 years ago, right? That was the pre-internet age, right? And so in those days, information was scarce. You had to go and you had to learn about everything. And guys, just by a show of hands, how many of you, like your broker or managing director, just give me a 1 in the chat if you ever had someone say you got to focus on one property type in one little area of town and learn every lease, get involved in every lease and every purchase and every sale. I see Olga says yes. I see Juan says yes. Yep. I see Christy, Nick. Okay, guys, we're about to throw rocks at that, and I'll tell you why. Okay. That was the methodology when information was scarce in the pre-internet age. Now, look at what happened during COVID. Look at what happened when multifamily, when they couldn't evict people. Look at what happened during COVID, for instance, with office buildings, everything died. So would you rather have one property type that you're familiar with and well-versed at, or 4, 5, or even 6 that you're comfortable selling? Do you see how having multiple property types under your belt will increase your chances for opportunities? Because what we have found, right? What we found is like most people pigeonhole themselves. What they do is they say, okay, I'm a office guy, I'm a multifamily gal, whatever that might be. So what winds up happening is people, they live or die by that one property type. But guess what? Real estate property types, the demand for them oftentimes can be cyclical. Look, multifamily during COVID, perfect example. Office during COVID, perfect example, right? The one thing that stayed pretty well strong was industrial, but people pigeonhole themselves. Why paint yourself into a corner, right? So because, oftentimes I get it. People don't want to sell a property type that they're unsure of. I understand. Nobody wants to feel like they're not knowledgeable, right? But guess what, folks? If the person down the street learned how to sell office, so can you. The person up the road learned how to sell industrial, so can you. Because what it does is most people, the reason why they don't go to the sales only approach like we're talking about, because to earn the most amount of money possible, The reason they don't do that is because their one particular property type won't give them enough opportunity in their market in order to sell just one property type. So they have to work with buyers. So they have to work with leasing. Is this making any sense, guys? Eric, Nick, any of you guys? Do me a favor and say, okay, Juan says yes, Eric says yes, cool. Eddie, Carrie, Albert, is this making sense for you guys? Okay. So what happens is the more opportunities you open yourself up to by adding multiple property types, guess what? That enables you to be pickier. That enables you to go to a very specific approach. People say, well, I don't want to be a generalist. You're not going to be a generalist. What you're going to be is a specialist in sales. And there's a difference. You create processes, you create systems, and you create a strategy, a specialized strategy on how to sell. And last I checked, 99 times out of 100, you're going to make way more money selling than you will do leasing and also working with buyers on the sell side. Okay. Now here's the thing, right? Where a lot of people go wrong, when you're figuring out kind of what strategy they want to implement, is that they don't have enough opportunities. So what happens is, like I mentioned, if you only have one property type, maybe two, you don't have enough opportunities. And what they try to do is they try to smash a square peg into a round hole. Guys, we've all done it, okay? But how many of you have ever worked with a client a little bit too long? How many of you guys have ever worked with someone and said, you know what, if I could just do this, because you didn't have the amount of opportunities. So you tried to turn, something, a person that just wasn't a good fit into someone that was going to be a good fit. Yep. I see Gary saying, yep. Okay. Who else, guys? Daniel, Candace, Bert, you guys with me? Did that ever happen to you? Right. Olga says, yes. Yep, exactly. John, Brenda. See, guys, this is what happens when you don't have enough opportunities. You're going to hold on to, you're going to cling, and you're going to try to turn something into an opportunity. And sometimes you just got to let it go. Imagine this. Let's say you went out and you had 50 people to choose from to work with. Do you think you could be a little bit pickier about who you worked with? As opposed to if you only had 2 people to work with, you're going to hang on for dear life. Okay. So if you don't have the strategy to create many, many opportunities for yourself, that's what happens, right? Try to fit the square peg in the round hole. So what you need to do is you need to get comfortable with the property types enough to understand how it operates. But the fastest way to get really good, guys, is to get good at the numbers, okay? At the end of the day, we sell income producing properties in large part. So if you can get really good at the numbers that are how the building operates and how things, the income, the expenses, the cap rates, and so forth, and understanding how they all fit together, if you can get really good at that and you can do it in about 90 days, that's going to give you a huge leg up. You don't have to know every single transaction that happened in the multifamily sector in the Northeast side of town. That's what a CoStar report is for. You know what I mean? But if you get really, really good at the numbers, you can jump over years and years of market knowledge, because market knowledge, you could just hit print and print out a 20-page report. Next thing you know, you read it for half an hour, you got an idea what's going on in that market. But if you really, really understand the finance side, it's going to allow you to add on another property type and another property type and another property type very, very quickly. That's the hack, guys. Okay. Understanding the numbers. So think about this, folks, right? How many of you would have far more opportunities if you didn't limit yourself to one property type or 2 property types, right? Do you think, put in the, do me a favor, put in the chat for me, okay? Do you think you'd have 2x opportunities, 3x opportunities, 4x opportunities? Think about it, folks. If you added on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 property types, right? There's 4 major ones, there's multifamily, there's industrial, there's office, right? And then there's also retail, okay? There's also hospitality. You can go into subsets of medical office. There's triple net properties, right? There's land. There's a ton of things, right? So think about if you started opening your mind, you started opening your practice, how many more you could have. I see Christy says 5x. Gary says 5x. Yes, exactly. Eric says 5 to 10. Nick says 10x. Exactly, guys. That's the thing. What I want you to do is start opening your mind. Think about how many opportunities you can create and how many are just going to be abundant for you. That's how you're going to be able to get to the sales only side of things, okay? Or the majority of your focus being on sales. I have no problem with you working with someone that maybe they're a good tenant, or they're a good client, you've done business with them before. Sure. But what I'm trying to get you to avoid is wasting time on people who are never going to transact. Okay. And then finally, when you learn the different types, you learn how they operate, you understand the numbers, you quadruple at least your ability to go to the sales side, right? Instead of going from one property type, you go to 4 property types. Boom. That's 400% more chances that you're going to have, right? And on top of it, as just like a little cherry on top, what you do is you kind of hedge for the ups and downs that individual property types have. Everything goes through different cycles, right? So if I don't know, if retail isn't really hot this year, don't worry. You got 3 or 4 or 5 other property types that you can work on. If multifamily is a little bit slow in your market, no problem. You got industrial in this one and that one. Is this making sense, guys? Yeah. Type of 1 in the chat for me if this is making sense. Like if like this is like shooting off some light bulbs for you, right? Because this is how it's done, folks. This is how it's done. And next thing you know, it's not uncommon for people to take and double and triple the amount of business that they're doing just by going to sales, because you're going to make the most amount of money there, by no longer wasting time with buyers that aren't going to be transact with you, getting ghosted by tenants and so forth, right? Hope this is making sense, right? And then finally, coming into it, right? Most people will never do this because they won't spend the time. And if to learn multiple property types or to learn the finance side of things. And if they come across a difficult situation, they wouldn't have the resources to ask, what they need to know in order to be successful. So that's why a lot of people just stay pigeonholed and they stick to what they know. Comfort is the enemy of change, right? Like it's very, very dangerous. That thing inside you that says, I just like my little comfort zone. Guess what? Growth happens way outside your comfort zone. So maybe you take it upon yourself and make 2023 your year to step out of that comfort zone and step into growth, because that's where the rubber meets the road, folks. It's not happening where you're warm and fuzzy. It's way outside of your comfort zone and when you're stretching, right? So now finally, the third skill that we're going to go over tonight, right, is how to earn 30 to 40% more commissions. Like I mentioned before, sometimes you have those banks that are pesky and deals fall apart last second, and you did absolutely everything you could. The buyer was ready, willing, and able. The seller was ready, willing, and able, but the bank wasn't. Okay. So these things, there's certain things in brokerage, because we are not the decision makers. What winds up happening is we lead the horse to water, and sometimes they don't drink. So the thing, what you can do to kind of counter that, to again, hedge against that, is to learn how to pick up both sides of the deal. How many of you would rather make $2 for the same transaction rather than $1 for the same amount of work? You with me, guys? Okay. So for those of you that want to earn another 30 or 40% more, because if you're double ending 1 out of every 3, one out of every, 4 deals, something like that, guess what? You start earning a whole lot more money by being a little bit intentional about it. Okay. For example, like the year before last, fourth quarter, I closed 5 transactions, and 4 of the 5, I got both the sell side and the buy side of the deal, right? That makes for a Merry Christmas, and that makes life a whole lot easier and takes the pressure off having to constantly come up with new transactions and take new listings. And it helps you account for not being able to close those transactions that maybe the bank kind of pulls out on, right? So most people would love to earn more money, but it's not because they don't want to. Again, they just don't know how to, right? So as an example, guys, right? If you knew how to do it, you'd already be doing it, right? It's just like we were talking about when it comes to listing properties. But a lot of agents, what they do is they if they are fortunate enough to get a listing, right? An owner trusts them with the property, they'll take the property, put it online, and cross their fingers and see if it sells. Well, last I checked, hope is not a business model. What you have to do is you have to understand what high producing brokers do. What they do is they identify who the most likely buyers are, and then they go after them in a systematic fashion. You guys with me? Okay. How many of you would like to be a high producing broker, right? Put HPB in if you'd like to be a high producing broker. I'd love to get that tattoo, HPB, right? Juan wants it. Eric wants it, right, guys? Who doesn't? Who doesn't want to be the best in their field? Who doesn't want to out earn everybody by a handful? Because remember, like I said before, guys, 10% of the brokers make 90% of the money in this business, because most people don't know how to unlock those highest levels of earnings. Guys, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. You do it by being intentional about what you do. You go with proven strategies. You remove all the guesswork, and this is how you do it. Okay. So what winds up happening is, so what needs to be done, you have to go out, you have to research, you have to identify, and then you have to reach out to what we call the usual suspects, right? In a particular cadence over time. Once those people see what you're doing and you have identified who the most likely buyers are of properties, life gets a whole lot easier when you built a database and you built a list and you built relationships with these people. You know exactly, if I take a listing in this area of town, I know exactly 10 people I'm going to go to immediately, right? Who buy that type of property, who are ready, willing, and able. And so you put it in front of them ASAP. There's nothing better than taking a listing and next thing you know, you got under contract in less than 2 weeks, you know, at something close to full ask price or even at full ask price. Right. So, but what the reality of it is, folks, most people will start the project of building a database. Most people will start the project of identifying these sellers, these buyers rather, but they don't really know if it'll work. They're like, yeah, I've heard you're supposed to do this. They'll never commit the time to develop a true database that will serve them for your whole career. Well, here's what happens, guys. What happens is, people will do things kind of halfway, right? And to really create a really, really robust database, you only have to do it once, okay? Most people, what they'll see is if you look in individual markets, okay, here in Miami, like for instance, small bay industrial trades 4% of absorption rate per year, which means chances are each individual property is going to be owned for about 25 years each, okay? So that means is that it's not like it's going to be changing like in residential where it's like every 7 to 10 years houses are turning over. Commercial properties turn over a whole lot less. So the point is you only have to build it once and then you update it a little bit over time. But meanwhile, that whole time that you have created this database and you are sending to it and you're creating relationships with people in it, you're able to earn money over and over and over again. Guys, it's the best gift you can give yourself. That's the gift that keeps on giving. That's the very definition of it. Okay. How many of you guys that have a database here? Type in database for me. Let me know if you have one, or if you'd like to have a database, give me a +2 in the chat. Let me know, folks.